Hello and welcome to Update X, where I talk about what's been going on in the gaming world over the past week. Uploaded every Monday morning on YouTube and podcast platforms. I am your host, Brandon Reshitar, at The Only Rush on Twitter and basically everywhere else. Today I'm going to be talking about my first 4 days with the PlayStation 5. Thankfully, it was delivered on launch day, November 12th, and I've already put a lot of hours into it between Astro's Playroom, Miles Morales, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and just messing with settings and stuff like that. It's probably around 24-ish hours I've put into the PlayStation 5 so far. And I'm also going to talk about some release windows for PS5 games coming in 2021, the videos of the Series X smoking, most of which are fake, don't believe everything you see on the internet, and more. We're going to get started with my PS5 experience so far. Real quick apology for how my voice sounds in this episode. I'm a bit congested right now. I don't have COVID or anything. I got tested like 3 days ago and it was negative, but this is just my yearly winter sickness that I get, so apologies for the way I sound in this episode. If you're listening to the podcast version, I do have the PS5 behind me right now, and I'm going to show, we've all kind of seen it already, but I'm going to show the YouTube watchers how big it actually is. So, the DualSense here, also, I'm going to talk more about that in a second. But the PlayStation 5 here, for people watching on YouTube, it is not small by any means. It's still hard to get the full picture unless you're seeing it in person. I have an Xbox controller here that I'm going to use, again, mainly for people on YouTube, but the Xbox controller next to the PS5, it's pretty big. And I do have the digital edition. I don't have the standard edition with the disc drive, so it is more symmetrical. It doesn't have the bulge on the side for the discs. It's on the base here. I switched around the base to put it on its side because it does not fit anywhere vertically on my entertainment center in the living room because my TV takes up the whole top of it. But it doesn't look as bad as I think the disc version would. And here's the DualSense again for people watching on YouTube. Apologize for podcast listeners, but next to an Xbox One controller, that is the DualSense. I thought it would be a little bit more bulky, but it's really not. It does feel really good to hold. The adaptive triggers and haptic feedback are insane. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when I talk about Astro's Playroom. So starting off with my PS5 experience so far. Again, I got it on November 12th. When this episode goes live, I will have had it for about 4 days. And the first thing I did after getting it out of the box was just, again, stare in awe at the size of it. I've even seeing all the pictures and videos online and the comparisons next to other consoles and things like that. When you pick it up for the first time and just look at it and you just realize how big it really is and you see it and you have it in your hands. I got it hooked up at first. I set up my profile. I turned on my PS4 so I could transfer saves and stuff like that over the Wi-Fi, which took about 5 hours, I want to say. I didn't really time it because when I got the PS5 out of the box and I set it up, powered it on, I started the transfer from my PS4, and while that was going, I played Astro's Playroom. So I didn't really have to worry about the transfer at all because I was already playing a game, which was nice. And the PS5 asked me which media apps I wanted to install right away. I selected Hulu, Netflix, YouTube, and Disney+. You can also download Prime Video, Peacock, and Apple TV. I'm pretty sure that's all the ones available so far, right off the bat. No HBO Max, which I was a little bit upset about, but they just don't have every single one just yet. But hopefully it won't be too long before we get the whole list in there. And I messed with some more settings after that. One specific setting I went to right away was game presets, which is a pretty cool feature on the PS5, where when you start most games, you're asked what difficulty you want to play on. You can invert the camera controls, use subtitles, and choose between performance and resolution modes. And with the PS5, you can tell your system what settings you usually play with. For example, I can set my preferred difficulty to easy or hard, or a few in-betweens. And I can set whether I like to play in performance modes or if I prefer a higher resolution. And I can tell my PS5 that I always turn subtitles on, and the PS5, when starting new games that take advantage of this, can apply those settings right off the bat, so I don't have to. I think that is a really cool feature with this, and a very small thing that a lot of people are going to forget about or take for granted, but it is a nice quality of life upgrade there. And right now I left the difficulty on game default because depending on the game, I adjust the difficulty to an easier or harder setting. Like Spider-Man, I'll play on the hardest difficulty because generally those aren't too difficult. And then other games like Demon Souls, which I haven't touched yet. Oh, I shouldn't use that as an example. There is no difficulty setting for that. But other settings, I play on easier difficulties. So that's the gist of it. And for performance or resolution setting, I set it to performance. I'll talk more about why when I get to Miles Morales. And I set both first and third person cameras to control normally, not inverted. And I set my subtitles to on and audio language to same as console because I always turn subtitles on in games that I play. And as far as storage goes, I'm not using it up as quick as I thought I would. So quick recap of the PS5 SSD. It had 825 gigabytes of storage, 667 gigabytes after the OS is accounted for, and there's another 60 gigabytes used in the other category. It says, this storage space is reserved for system data needed for games and apps to work properly. The amount of space reserved depends on how your console is being used. So I wasn't sure exactly what that was about. I thought the OS was the only thing we needed to worry about, but it looks like there is this additional 59.9 gigabytes taken up by that other category. But after the OS and that 60 gigs on mine, it was around 600 gigabytes left, which isn't a ton. It isn't like a terabyte or anything that we've had on previous consoles like the Xbox One X, or I think the PS4 Pro also had a 1 terabyte console that was out, which is unfortunate. But I'm not filling up as quickly as I thought I would. So going through what I have left on my console so far after I've had it for 4 days, I have that 59.9 gigabytes taken up by that other category. 1.66 gigabytes is taken up by my save data between PS4 and PS5 games. My media gallery is 2.13 gigabytes, but I need to clean that out already because that will fill up quick. Your media gallery is all of your captures, and the PS5 by default takes a screenshot and records a 15-second video of every trophy you get, which is really cool that you will have clips of some cool trophy moments, but you will also have a lot of clips from trophies that you don't really care to see, and that will add up quickly, especially if you're a trophy hunter. So I'm leaving that auto capture for trophies on though, because I still want some of those moments captured. I just have to remember to go back and delete a bunch every so often so it doesn't take up a lot of space. And my games and apps are taking up 322.6 gigabytes so far, leaving me with 280.3 gigabytes left still, which is pretty good actually. I have most games that I want installed already. I have Disney+, YouTube, Netflix, Ghost of Tsushima, Hollow Knight, Fall Guys, Rocket League, God of War, Bloodborne, The Last Guardian, Days Gone, Jak 1, 2, and 3 because I love those games and they will always be installed. And Bugsnax, Spider-Man Miles Morales, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Hulu, and Astro's Playroom. So all those downloaded onto my PS5, I still have 280.3 gigabytes left. I still need Demon Souls and Sackboy: A Big Adventure, and maybe the new Call of Duty soon. But I was worried about running out of space early, and I don't think it'll be a problem just yet, thankfully. And I can also delete Astro's Playroom and Miles Morales too, because I got the platinum of both those already, and probably won't touch them again. But again, 280.3 gigabytes still free, which isn't terrible. And as for the games I've played so far, the first thing I played when getting the PS5 all set up was Astro's Playroom. And I played that first because I've been really excited about the DualSense controller, and I wanted to see everything that it could do. And Astro's Playroom as a whole is nothing short of incredible, also the DualSense controller. The adaptive triggers are such a cool experience that can't really be talked about accurately. You have to experience it for yourself, and you have to feel the DualSense while you're playing Astro's Playroom to get the full idea of what it actually is and how the adaptive triggers and the haptic feedback work. The vibrations from walking on sand or skating around on ice or raindrops hitting Astro's little umbrella hat that he has is so cool, and I knew what haptic feedback was going to be when they talked about it, but again, you have to actually feel it. The raindrops hitting his umbrella, you could feel, it felt like there was different raindrops hitting the DualSense where your hand was, and walking on sand, it feels gritty, and it feels like there's sand in there, and then at one point, there are a bunch of little astrobots in the controller on the screen, and then you move your controller around, and it feels like there are different astrobots like rolling around in your controller. It is such a cool thing, and I was just smiling like a kid the entire time I was playing Astro's Playroom because of the DualSense and the adaptive triggers and the haptic feedback. It is so much fun. And the game itself, aside from the DualSense, it is a really awesome platformer. And it is really fun to play, actually. I love the music that's in it, in the different worlds that they have that represent different parts of the PS5. They have the SSD area, the GPU area, memory spot, and the another one. I don't remember what the last one is right now. But they each have a song, like a song that they made about that part, because they have an SSD song and a GPU song, and they're actually pretty good. It's like really fun to just listen to them, and the melody's really good, and I enjoyed the soundtrack along with the gameplay. And also the references to so many classic PlayStation games that are hidden throughout Astro's Playroom, which whether it's, I mean, most of them are Astrobots that are dressed up like iconic PlayStation characters like Kratos and Atreus, and Heavy Rain references, and Jin Sakai from Ghost of Tsushima. There are all these different references to classic PlayStation games, and it really reminds you how iconic the PlayStation first-party games are, and the lineup over the years of PlayStation games, how memorable and iconic they are. Crash Bandicoot, a reference to that as well. I cannot say enough good about Astro's Playroom. It is a very fun platformer and a very good showcase of the DualSense and how incredible this controller really is. And also, I've heard a lot about the DualSense being played with Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, and how the trigger kind of fights back and matches the fire rate of the weapon, and that it feels like a real trigger on an actual firearm, which is really cool. But I haven't played that one just yet. I want to soon-ish. But I am in Assassin's Creed Valhalla right now, and that is going to take up a lot of time. So I'm not sure when I'm going to get to Call of Duty, but I do want to eventually. And for Astro's Playroom, I beat all the levels in the main missions, I guess, in I think 2 or 3 hours. And my notes aren't updated from when I got the platinum, because when I wrote the notes earlier yesterday, I didn't get the platinum yet, but then later on I did. So I got to kind of update this as I'm reading it. Ran through each level, and then once I completed all the levels without the platinum, I went on to Miles Morales, because I also really wanted to get into that game. And Miles Morales, well, another thing while I was playing Astro's Playroom, I started the download for Miles Morales while I started Astro's Playroom, because I didn't want to have to wait afterwards. And before I even finished Astro's Playroom, Miles Morales was done, so I didn't have to wait for that, thankfully. And I was really on the fence about whether I was going to play Miles Morales on performance or fidelity mode. The performance mode playing in dynamic 4K at 60 frames per second without ray tracing, and the fidelity mode being in 4K with ray tracing at 30 frames per second. And I had to go with performance mode because 30 versus 60 frames per second is very noticeable for me. I know it's not for everybody. And the game just plays so smoothly, and the game plays so much better as a whole on 60 FPS, and it still looks incredible. Like when switching between performance and fidelity modes on Miles Morales, I could tell very small differences. Like with the ray tracing, if you're on fidelity mode, if you're on a glass building, you can see accurate reflections of Spider-Man and his suit and all the buildings behind you and all that. It is very well done and very accurately ray traced, I guess. But even on the performance mode, there are reflections in the buildings and on the glass. They just aren't accurate. If you look at the reflection on one of the skyscrapers and you turn around, the buildings don't match what the reflection is. But just the fact that there are still reflections there that look really good is plenty fine with me to opt for performance mode and recommend performance mode to everybody else, because the game still looks incredible, and to the point where you're not going to notice the graphic differences that much when you're playing on performance versus fidelity, I think. I think 60 frames per second is very worth it for that trade-off. As for the game itself, I loved Miles Morales. They put a lot of work into the tricks he can do in the air. The animations for swinging and the combat for Miles are very unique to him. Miles Morales is his own Spider-Man, very different in a very good way from Peter Parker's Spider-Man. And to me, swinging around the city and doing acrobatic tricks is so much more fun in this game than it was in the 2018 Spider-Man game. There are so many different tricks to do. The animations are great for his swinging and everything like that. Again, it is very unique to Miles. and they've put a lot of work into it, and you can tell. And one thing I loved about the 2018 Spider-Man game was the suits you could wear. And so many of the suits we got were so cool, and I would regularly switch around which suit I was wearing in that game because I loved so many of them. And in Miles Morales, I only used 2 or 3 suits because I didn't love all of them as much as the ones in the last game. I used the Spider-Man 2020 suit, which is that Daft Punk looking one, and the Spider-Man Miles Morales 2099 suit because that one also looks really cool. And it was kind of the same thing for the suit mods. I felt like I put more thought into my build in the last game. And in Miles Morales, I picked 2 of the first ones that you got and stuck with it because they worked. And I'd say that is one downside, but not a big one. Also, it is much shorter than the last Spider-Man game, though. A lot shorter. I didn't time how long it took to beat the game the first time through, but I did get the Platinum Trophy for this game, which for non-PlayStation players, that means I got every trophy in the game, which is PlayStation's equivalent to Xbox's achievements. And the Platinum took me 14 hours-ish, and that includes beating the game on New Game Plus mode. So I beat it once, started from the beginning, and I put the second playthrough on the easiest difficulty just so I can get through it and get the Platinum. My first playthrough was on the 3rd highest difficulty out of 4. I skipped every cutscene that I could in the second playthrough so I could get it done. But being a shorter game, the plot twists and the action are much closer together, so it feels like bigger moments happen more frequently in this game than they did in 2018 Spider-Man game. So Miles Morales, 14-ish hour Platinum. Pretty short game, but it's $50. And a really great game as a whole that I loved playing through. So I would still recommend getting this game, playing it on performance mode specifically. But it is a very good game. And all the good talk set aside for a second, I had one crash with Miles Morales. After I beat it the first time, I was in one of the last cutscenes of the game. And at one point, the screen froze for a few seconds, and I kind of just waited to see if it would just jump forward or do its own thing. And my screen just turned black after that, and then my PS5 shut itself off, and I was kind of confused for a second. I mean, it's a new console, so I wasn't totally surprised something happened, but it still sucked. It really threw me off, and I went to feel the console. It didn't really feel hot at all. Like, it felt a little bit warm, but nowhere near the temperature it should be to shut itself off for being too hot. Which is another good thing about this console. It is very quiet. I have not heard the fan audibly while I was playing any of the games out of the 24-ish hours I've put into this thing. I have not heard a fan noise. I have not heard any kind of loud buzzing or anything. It has been silent. It is really cool. But back to the issue I had with it. So again, the console wasn't hot, so it didn't overheat. After pressing the power button a couple separate times, because it didn't work the first time I hit it, and then a couple minutes later I tried it again, and then it turned itself back on. And once it came back on, it said repairing system storage for a few seconds, followed by a screen that said a problem occurred in the system software the last time your PS5 was used, and asked if I wanted to report the problem. So I reported the problem, and then my system went back to the home screen, and I had to start Miles Morales back from the title screen of it, but continued at the beginning of that same cutscene, and it played through fine that time. So I didn't lose any progress or anything, nothing got corrupted, all my downloads were still there. All things considered, this crash was about as simple and painless-ish as it could get. It just shut off, I had to wait a couple minutes and restart it. It had to do that repair system storage thing, which scared me for a sec, but everything was fine, and apparently a lot of people are having problems with the 2018 Spider-Man Remastered when they put their PS5 into rest mode, and I think my issue was caused by rest mode also, and it makes sense compared to other people's issues because I was putting it in rest mode whenever I hopped off Miles Morales for a bit, and it's very unfortunate considering rest mode and quick resume are some of the best features of the last gen and the now current gen, in my opinion. But with the speed of the SSD, skipping out on rest mode and quitting games and shutting the console down completely doesn't also mean you have to wait forever for games to boot up, because when I got my PS5 turned back on after the crash and jumped into Miles Morales, it was maybe a total of 15 seconds when I was back into that cutscene again, so all things considered, it's not that big of a deal to just shut your console down all the way. But there isn't a full solution for this just yet because people have been reporting this problem with rest mode and the Spider-Man games. Insomniac said they're looking into it. I'm sure PlayStation is also looking into it. I would assume it's just rest mode and Spider-Man having the problems. I haven't put it into rest mode while playing Valhalla yet because I don't want to have the same problem. But I would say, what I'm doing right now is just skipping out on rest mode and shutting my console off and just starting it up from the beginning and loading my save from Assassin's Creed that way. But again, it is very quick, so it's not that big of a deal. The only issue I have with that right now is not being able to charge my controller in rest mode because I don't have that charging dock for my controller just yet. I'm waiting a little bit for that one. Hopefully they can fix these rest mode issues soon because I do want to use it, obviously. And after getting that platinum in Miles Morales, again, that took about 14 hours. I went back into Astro's Playroom to get that platinum. There were a lot of hidden trophies for that game, a lot more than I thought there were, so I had to look up a couple guides to get a handful of those, but I did get the platinum in Astro's Playroom. Total playtime on that one was about 4 hours, so it's about a 4-hour platinum for that game. And after that, went on to Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I've been excited about this game for months, and I think it's not bad so far, but I think my expectations were too high because I really wanted that Viking RPG kind of thing. And you have to keep in mind it is a cross-gen game. It is a Ubisoft game, so it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be bugs. And again, being a Ubisoft game, the character models aren't going to look insane. They still look good, but my expectations, again, after playing Spider-Man Miles Morales as well, while that is also a cross-gen game, it is a very beautiful game. And from what I've played so far of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, it gets better as you get further into it. The environments look really good on the PS5. The water looks great. The snow, the trees, the landscape as you're looking out. Also plays 60 frames per second, which is not a totally new thing for me, but it's becoming a new norm for me, and now I'm realizing it a lot easier, where playing Assassin's Creed, swinging the camera any direction, or when you go to one of those synchronization points that are really high up and then you synchronize, the camera backs up and it does a whole 360 view of your area. And 30 versus 60 frames per second on that. 30 frames when you're doing a pan, 360 degrees like that, the picture doesn't jump a lot, but it's kind of blurry a little bit as it's going around at that speed. And 60 frames per second goes a lot smoother with those camera pans, and playing it as a whole with the combat and running around and riding on horseback, it is a lot smoother, and I am very used to 60 frames per second now. And now anytime I jump back on my Xbox One X, or if I play any game that's not 60 frames per second on PS5, it is going to be noticeable for me, and it is going to be a bummer. But 60 frames per second is a game changer, and I'm really happy we're getting towards a future where that is the norm. And once I get done with Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I might either jump into Demon's Souls, because I've been very on the fence about that one, because I feel like I'm not going to be good at it and I'm going to put it down because I suck. But I do want to play it. Or I might jump into Bugsnax, since that one is free on PS5 right now. I haven't downloaded. Eventually I might get into it. The game as a whole doesn't really pull me. I don't really care for it that much, but the fact that it's free and it's maybe an easy platinum, I might do it that way. After that, I might play Days Gone, because I never played that one on PS4, and since it runs at 60 frames per second on PS5, and I've heard good things about it recently, I do want to check that one out as well. Also in the PS Plus collection, again, if you have a PS5, you get a bunch of free games through the PS Plus collection. It is a really good deal for that one. It is some of the better games from the last generation: God of War, Days Gone, The Last of Us Remastered, stuff like that. So, summarizing statement on my experience in my first 4 days with the PlayStation 5. Again, about 24 hours of gaming on the thing. It is silent. It's not making any noise, which is really cool. The 60 frames per second is such a nice change of pace for next-gen games. Graphically, what I've played so far looks really good. The DualSense controller is incredible, and I love the adaptive triggers and the haptic feedback. When you're getting into a game, you kind of forget about it and you become used to it, and then you don't realize the different things it's doing just yet, because I remember when they were first talking about haptic feedback in Miles Morales, they talked about when he does one of those venom punches, you can feel the haptic feedback in the controller the vibration going from the left side of the controller to the right as it goes through to his right arm as he comes through. And I honestly didn't even realize when that happened, and I didn't think about it until after I beat the game. So once you get used to it, it sucks, but you kind of just acknowledge that it's there subconsciously and you don't pay attention to it as much. But the adaptive triggers is different because that affects how easy it is to pull the trigger down, which is kind of cool. Again, more prevalent on different parts of Astro's Playroom and apparently Black Ops Cold War, but again, I haven't played that yet. I am excited to see how the adaptive triggers work in that game. And going on from my first 4 days with PS5, we've got some release window updates for some PlayStation exclusive games. I'm grabbing info from an IGN article by Jordan Alleman, and the dates come from a PS5 launch advertisement, and it confirms that Gran Turismo 7, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, and Returnal are anticipated to launch in the first half of 2020, and Horizon Forbidden West is set to launch in the second half of 2021. If I said first half of 2020, that's not what I meant. I'm pretty sure I said 2021, but in case I didn't, I meant first half of 2021. And with a great launch already for PS5 in Miles Morales, Astro's Playroom, Godfall, although that looks like it got mixed reviews, Demon's Souls, and more, it looks like the momentum only gets stronger in 2021 for the PS5 games. Remember, we're also supposed to be getting the next God of War in 2021 also, probably also second half, probably holiday time frame. And it's an incredible list of games already, and it only makes me more excited for the future of PlayStation games. And keep in mind, we are still in a coronavirus world and dates could get delayed, but these are the timeframes we're currently looking at for these 2021 games. And I feel like for the past year and probably longer, I haven't been so excited for this many games coming out. We got some great games in the past year, like Jedi Fallen Order, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2, and all that. But even the PS5 2021 list, not even including the Xbox side, which also has some great games coming, we as gamers are going to be eating really well for the next year. And going forward, it is such a great feeling having all these huge games coming up. Cyberpunk as well, although that one has been very rocky trying to hit the launch date, and hopefully it doesn't continue to get delayed from that December 10th date. But it is a great time to be into video games right now, and I'm very excited, even though my wallet's not, for the games coming up soon. And now for all the videos that have been going around about the Xbox Series X smoking. Grabbing some info from another IGN article by Matt T.M. Kim. And we all know there are plenty of people on the internet who are way too into the whole console war thing, and I think most of us can agree that it is annoying and a huge waste of time on everybody's part. And recently it's gotten to a whole different level of stupidity. Apart from the smoking videos for a second, there have also been pictures posted of people destroying their PS5s and Series X's just because they don't like the console or the brand or whatever. And this is stupid for many reasons. One, you already gave them your money, so you're an idiot in that sense. And two, specifically in the environment we're in right now, where millions of people weren't and still aren't able to get the consoles they want because of the insane demand and low supply. You're the asshole who bought one, taking it away from someone who would have absolutely loved to have one, and you destroyed it because you think that matters. So I don't think I'm ever going to fully understand the mindset of people that do this. It is unfortunate that they exist, and they are idiots for doing that, and they are taking it away from other people who would really enjoy it and who are trying their hardest to get one and they can't. But I don't know. I will never understand the people that do that. But back to the smoking videos for a second. If you haven't seen them, they are mostly videos of the Series X standing up with smoke coming out the top vent. And in some videos, the smoke is ridiculously thick, and the video is only about 10 seconds long, and the video doesn't show the bottom of the console. So people are more than likely just blowing vape smoke at the bottom and letting the smoke come out the top, posting it like their Xbox is on fire or having massive electrical problems or something like that. And the pure stupidity of some people blows my mind, talking about the people destroying their consoles and now this. Is trying to make a brand look bad that important to you is my main question. Like, just like the people destroying their consoles, it's something that I don't think I'm ever going to be able to understand fully. why people do this. And Xbox tweeted a response to these videos saying, "We can't believe we have to say this, but please do not blow vape smoke into your Xbox Series X." I can't believe they have to say it either, and not to mention it could actually damage your console by blowing that smoke into there. This is just one of those moments where I need to see something good to restore a little bit of my faith in humanity, because it is at an all-time low with all that kind of stuff. And after the gaming news, going into gaming deals, there are 3 days left from today, Monday, in Xbox's Bandai Namco sale with up to 80% off games like Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, Jump Force, Dark Souls 3, Tekken 7, and more. PlayStation's Indies sale is up to 75% off games like Moving Out, Overcooked 2, Super Hot, Mind Control Delete, and more until November 20th. PlayStation has a Planet of the Discount sale with up to 70% off games like XCOM 2, Tekken 7, My Hero 1's Justice 2, and more until November 20th. PlayStation's deal of the week is 40% off Captain Tsubasa Rise of New Champions and 30% off the deluxe edition of the game. That deal ends November 21st. And Nintendo has a section showing you games that are on sale for under $15 until November 18th on games like Dragon Ball FighterZ, Taiko no Tatsujin Drum and Fun, Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, and more. And going into upcoming releases via Metacritic, really not much this week because, rightfully so, no one wants to try and have their game compete with launch games for next-gen consoles. So we've got Serious Sam Collection releases November 17th for PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate releases November 17th for everything. PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Series X, Switch, PC, and Stadia. Halo 4 comes to the PC version of the Master Chief Collection November 17th, which is awesome. Sniper Elite 4 releases November 17th for Switch. And Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity releases November 20th for Switch. And going on to what have I been playing, as we just talked about, a lot of PS5. I said before, Platinum in Miles Morales, loved it. Platinum in Astro's Playroom, loved it. On to Assassin's Creed Valhalla now. And for the next probably couple weeks at least, it's still going to be Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Maybe get Call of Duty to play with some friends in between some Assassin's Creed Valhalla gameplay, but we'll see. So this has been your update for November 16th, 2020. Thank you so much for listening on YouTube and podcast platforms. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and podcast feed so you don't miss an episode. And follow the show's page on Twitter and Instagram at UpdateXShow. And my personal Twitter page at TheOnlyRush. Thank you so much again for listening. Have an awesome week playing those new games. I'll see you next week.